Today we meet Jesus Christ warning against hypocrisy. He openly speaks to the disciples and the crowds around, and inevitably through them to us, about the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. So I'm going to read from Matthew 23 and recognise it's not just locked into one particular point in time, but it has a truth that all of us can embrace. Matthew 23, 1 through to 12. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, and themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and their tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. But you're not to call them rabbi, for you have only one teacher and you're all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father and he is in heaven. Nor are you to call people, call them instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Jesus was very concerned about the people's reaction to what the Pharisees offered to him. He criticized the scribes and the Pharisees for laying burdens upon people. That's what verse 4 says quite clearly. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, and they themselves are not willing to lift a finger. You know, you have to read this in the light of what we read elsewhere in Matthew's Gospel. Isn't this the exact opposite of what we read in Matthew 11:28? Because it tells us in 11:28, "Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Well, the one thing that these religious leaders did was they didn't give light burdens to people, they gave heavy burdens. What was the shape of those burdens? Well, they might be in terms of things people had to pay, in terms of laws they had to follow. True religion, of course, should free us from burdens. It should lift those things that weigh us down. It should make us free. Jesus said, you should be free. And when you're free indeed because of what he has done for us. You read that in John chapter 8. And the man at the church door invites a stranger in, but he's got a sour face, and that puts the visitor off. The visitor might say, "I've got enough problems already, don't give me any more." And Jesus is concerned that religion, at its truest, deepest sense, doesn't make life more difficult for people, but gives them a real sense of joy. The issues are very deep for Jesus as he exposes how religion can become a spectacle. This is a hypocrisy. Remember, hypocrisy is play acting. It's putting on something that's not real towards other people. So we read the nature of this hypocrisy. Verse 5, "Everything they do is done for people to see, loving to be seen." We're not meant to be at centre stage when we're serving Jesus Christ. And so when Jesus questions the hypocrisy of the religious leaders of his day, it has a message for all of us. Using religious externals. It talks about making sure that they love the places of honor at banquets, and they love to be people who express themselves. They have phylacteries that are wide, tassels on their gown. All of this are the externals, and the externals of religion can become, for every one of us, whoever we are and wherever we're from, they can become so much a hindrance to other people. And seeking respect. Oh, they sought respect. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces. They love people to recognize them. They love to be the people who say, "Oh gosh, look at him, look at her." They're very, very important people. And the religious leaders were often like this. These people were doing the exact opposite of what Jesus wanted to be and wanted to offer to his followers. He calls us to a life of humility. He calls us to a life of service, and they wanted to be noticed by other people. In a way, the gospel, within a very short period of time, would be turning the world upside down. But they're turning the world upside down in a way that's unhelpful. They're turning the way of humility that Jesus offered to his disciples and to others into a way that is not there. End of the passage. Here's the key in verse 12 of chapter 23 of Matthew's Gospel. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted, turning the world upside down, turning it right way on by learning that way of Jesus that makes all the difference. You can just begin to imagine what it meant for those early religious leaders to have Jesus question what it is, what they're doing, and what it is that they presented. They had to be sure that they guarded against hypocrisy. Good word for us today.